Skylanders. There, I said it. I just had to get that out of the way first before I can start. So let's just move on already. Hey there, welcome to the finale of my Childhood Trilogy of videos, where I waste a few months of my time talking about the things that I was into when I was young and stupid. Where before, I talked about what influenced my style, and what inspired my creativity, now I'm going to have to talk about what seems to be one of my biggest regrets in life so far, and what's probably the reason why I'd rather forget most of what happened in elementary school. But as is the tradition of this series, I'm gonna have to talk about the history of these games before my experiences, so let's just get on with that, because other than what I said before the beginning of this, I have a few choice words for this particular era of my life. So what is Skylanders, and where did it come from? Well, to talk about this, I'd also have to talk about the elephant in the room, being the Spyro the Dragon video game series. Spyro once started out as a successful trilogy of games on the original PlayStation in the late 90s, developed by Insomniac Games, aka the guys who also developed Ratchet & Clank and the new Spider-Man games. Spyro was so successful, in fact, that he rivaled Crash Bandicoot in terms of popularity and as a mascot for that console. But like the Orange Marsupial, once the developers left, the license for the series was tossed around to different developers and publishers, releasing games of such a mixed variety of quality that one could mistake it for a bag of goddamn trail mix. Eventually, the licenses for both Crash and Spyro were bought by Activision, and while Crash was being turned into a beat-em-up, one developer had a different idea going on. Toys for Bob was messing around with NFC technology and presented the idea of a Toys to Life game to Activision, who thought that it was a great idea, but also a very risky one. So they went to Nintendo to see if they could co-publish it, and in turn, also have it be a Nintendo console exclusive. Nintendo declined the offer, but would soon come to regret that decision. Activision then decided to publish it on its own, while also attaching the Spyro name for some extra leverage. 2011 arrives, and bada bing bada boom, we now have Skylanders Spyro's Adventure on the scene, selling absolute gangbusters thanks to its novel concept and advertisements up the wazoo. Seriously, I remember there being so many commercials. It was unbelievable. Activision, being no stranger to milking their game series dry at the first sight of monetary gain, hint hint, got Toys for Bob and Vicarious Visions to work on a sequel to come out the next year, with the end result being Skylanders Giants, released in 2012. It sold even more than its predecessor, and in turn sold even more figures, especially the ones called Giants, the gimmick and the namesake. The same thing happened in 2013 with Skylanders Swap Force, the gimmick here being characters that can swap torsos and legs for different abilities. The first time this formula faltered was in 2014 with Trap Team and its villain recruiting gimmick, actually selling less than the previous game. This new pattern would continue with 2015's Superchargers and its race driving gimmick, and 2016's Imaginators with its character creator gimmick, the last game in the series. There's also a Netflix series called Skylanders Academy that came out in 2016 as well, which got 2 more seasons in 2017 and 2018. After that, other than a mobile game, the Skylanders series effectively died off, especially after the rejuvenated popularity of Spyro with the reignited trilogy. Vicarious Visions would go on to make the Crash Insane trilogy, Nitro Kart Refueled, and the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remix, and Toys for Bob would go on to make the Spyro Reignited trilogy and Crash 4. Right now, I feel as though both developers don't really have too much of a reason to go back to the Skylanders series. And frankly, I'm all for it if we get more stuff like this at the cost of one dead game series that spawned a whole fad in the 2010s. And speaking of that fad, I'm talking about the Toys to Life genre of games. The early to mid 2010s battle royale, one could call it. Starting out with Skylanders, like I said before, other companies saw what was going on and wanted to cash in on the huge success with their own titles. This spawned such series such as Disney Infinity, LEGO Dimensions, Lightseekers, Starlink Battle for Atlas are probably the only ones still going on, Nintendo's Amiibos. Yeah, Nintendo decided to strike back with a vengeance and made their own figures based off of their large catalog of characters, and what better game to introduce them than Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and Nintendo 3DS, a game with an already large catalog of Nintendo characters. The thing about these figures is the fact that they don't just work with one game or series, unlike any of the other previously mentioned series. Instead, they can work on as many games Nintendo pleases. I mean, sure, they only really unlock small functioning games rather than being the main focus, We don't talk about Amiibo Festival or Mario Party 10. This helps make them even more valuable, as this wide range of functionality would make players want these pieces of plastic even more than figures belonging to and only working on one game series. You can see why this phase in gaming faded out so suddenly. At first, the genre was a huge money-grabbing business, taking up entire sections of toy and game stores alike, and now it's just a bunch of bargain big figures worth only a few dollars. These bar a few exceptions, they have no real use outside of their games, not even working too well as display pieces, with again only amiibos being the only real figures with value due to better functionality. You can also see why making a new game in this series would most definitely result in a flop, due to people having wised up to these greedy fucks' practices, and the fact that the gimmick has just run its course. It'd be like trying to bring back fidget spinners or pogs as trends or anything that doesn't include nostalgia. People are just over it at this point. This is basic business one can learn from a class, which is exactly what happened to me when I took entrepreneurship and marketing as electives. They were boring as hell for the most part, but I got to learn a few things here and there that helped me understand how this stuff works a bit more. So now, we finally arrived at the part where I talk about my experiences, as I always do. Fuck. Starting in 2012, my first experience getting to know what Skylanders is was when I played Giants at a neighbor's place. Nothing much happened other than us playing through a turret section. Later during the summer, I got the starter pack for that weird mobile game, Battlegrounds. From what I remember, it was pretty fun for a mobile game, but that's not really saying much, so moving on. In Christmas of 2013, I got Swap Force, which unfortunately got me into my whole tirade, getting as many toys as I could, getting utterly addicted to these pieces of PVC plastic, falling into Activision's money-making scheme, and setting a reputation which would stay in full force until elementary ended, only diminishing once I got into high school. Anyways, I got Trap Team for my birthday in 2014, and still didn't care for what was happening, as the series just took over my life at that point. I mean, sure, I still had Lego, I guess, but I missed out on so many things. It feels like what Fortnite did to so many kids not too long ago, and still manages to do. God, I hope that made sense. It's like a total and complete investment or something like that. I don't know, not too sure. I got Superchargers on launch day in 2015. Okay, now even YouTube wasn't safe from my obsession. This was the point where I started watching way more Skylanders content than before, especially from a certain channel, and if you know what Skylanders is in any capacity, then you know what channel I'm talking about. This was also the time when some cracks were starting to form, as I was finally making some realizations at that time that this shit was not cool. Hell, guess what I took home from Ohio as a souvenir. But I still commenced forwards and got even more. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention that I got one of those card packs for Battlecast, that barely functioning piece of shit. In 2016, I made my old YouTube channels and started to post content onto them. And that series, I'm still not going to say the name again, it's too long, was most prominent on the first one. Take a guess on what I stuck to the most with that second one. Yeah, exactly. Imagine going onto someone else's gaming channel and half of their content revolves around reacting and reviewing Skylanders trailers. And now that the channel is dead, the first video anyone will see on it is going to have a guy with a banana head on the thumbnail. That's not embarrassing at all. Anyways, I got Imaginators in 2016 at launch, which was the last game I got in the series for obvious reasons. Okay, this was the year where I finally started to better understand that this crap wasn't all that good, especially with how lackluster this game was, and the fact that I was almost 13 at that time, meaning that I was going to grow up out of it. This was also probably my first current gen version of a game of the series at the time, having most of the other games on Xbox 360 and Wii, both running pretty well aside from a graphical hit on the Wii. I got Imaginators on the PS4 and even got an Xbox One S alongside the Xbox One version. So I never said this before, but because of my living predicament, I was given my opportunity to be even more of an addicted dumbass by also getting what are known as Dark Editions of these starter sets, on top of the regular sets. These Dark Editions are basically a deluxe set with extra figures, and each one getting a black and silver paint job. So basically, I got 8 sets, 10 if we're including the Battleground set, and an unopened Dark Edition of Swap Force for PS3. By accident. Now, Superchargers is a special case, having like 4 versions of its starter pack, because on the Wii and 3DS it's actually a spin-off called Superchargers Racing, which also has a dark edition. So imagine me in 2015 after realizing this. Luckily for my parents' wallets, they were smart enough not to get all of them for me. So yeah, bad spending habits aside, I also watched all 3 seasons of the Netflix series. The first one because I was a fan, the second one out of sheer morbid curiosity, and the last one because I was legitimately interested in where the story was heading. So sue me. I also wanted to talk about the guest characters as well, seeing as I'm now running out of things to talk about. I'm assuming because Nintendo was still kinda butthurt from not being involved in Skylanders' success and their Wii U still bombing hard, they let Donkey Kong and Bowser be supercharged, yes that's what happens in the prequel comic, they were given their own vehicles and can even work as amiibos. The catch being the fact that they can only work on Nintendo consoles. I mean, what'd you expect? Crash Bandicoot and Dr. Cortex were also included in Imaginators with their own series-inspired level, and thankfully not console exclusive, but a starter pack including the 2 was, for the PS4. I like to think about a funny thing that happened was the E3 2016 reveal for the Crash Trilogy remake getting a standing ovation, but then losing all excitement when only the gameplay for his guest appearance was shown. Also, because I left that cliff note in my last video, I'm going to talk about LEGO Dimensions a bit. As previously stated, it was one of the games that tried to capitalize on the success of Skylanders. It was basically a huge ass crossover game in the style of a regular LEGO game, plus a gimmick of constantly having to switch where the figures are placed on the base. It was fun for a bit, but was also cancelled in 2017, so now I have yet another bin full of worthless toys. Well, at least LEGO is a bit more active nowadays, so I guess they're not completely useless. Also, I got LEGO Dimensions for my birthday alongside a PS4 that had Star Wars Battlefront included in it. It was pretty neat. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that I followed a Skylanders news channel, a very small one, and he was doing Q&As, which I actually participated in. You can actually find some of the comments in the old videos, at least I think you can. I mean, he also used one of my Instagram pics as a thumbnail, which I thought was pretty neat. So in conclusion, this is probably the messiest period of my life so far. Now, I will acknowledge that this probably was quite a few people's childhoods, and that maybe you still have some fond memories. Even I still think that Superchargers was the best in the series, sue me. I'm not insulting you for ever liking nor having fun with these games, as they were just that. Games. This video was made to only talk about this particular phase of my life, and why I may have some regrets for it. Especially with it, I guess, affected me in a way. But that is definitely not to say that I had some good times that involved it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I wish Skylanders didn't have such a hold on me back then. I just wish I wasn't addicted to it back then. And I guess I'll just leave it on that note. Thank you for watching this final video in my Childhood Trilogy, and hence the final part of my tribute to my past, and the final part of my farewell to that time of my life. I hope that you've enjoyed my trip down memory lane, and that you even learned a few things or two about what I talked about here. If you did, make sure that you click the like and subscribe buttons to help support the channel and watch more content like this. I also have a website as well if you didn't know, which hosts a lot of things I make besides YouTube videos, such as artwork, links to games, and my other social media like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and my Discord server. So make sure that you check it out by clicking the link below. Just do it. Anyway, I'll see you next time.